don't think people realized it, but phones getting bigger started off as more of a form-following function. I mean, Steve Jobs even used the words, "We've made something wonderful for your hand," when he announced the first iPhone, mainly because the original idea was for your phone to be ergonomic. I seriously wonder if Samsung ever thought the first Galaxy Note would ever become the phenomenon that it was. It's funny in retrospect that all of us in the media mock the concept of using a phone that big, only for the market to force even Apple to follow the trend. Now, I say form follows function because at first, it really was just a concept which then evolved into the need of giving users more endurance since battery technology hasn't really shrunk in a decade. At the time, you picked the big phone because you wanted it to last longer, but I'm sure many of you still struggle with handling it every day. I'd even bet that if any company were to figure out how to make a great small phone with amazing battery life, you might even think twice. And well, it seems that time has finally come. This is the Galaxy S24, Samsung's smallest of its latest flagships, and maybe the best phone for anyone that's looking for a great device on an ergonomic package. I'm Jaime Rivera with Pocketnow, and let's dive into our extended review. I know, for many of you, this idea that the S24 is a small phone is a bit hilarious, but I think it's mainly because you're judging a book by its cover. Yes, the screen size of this phone sounds massive compared to how things were a decade ago, but just remember bezels and aspect ratios changed a lot more than 5 years ago. I think the easiest way for me to provide you with context is if I were to compare this phone to the Ultra. While the difference is really just less than half an inch in screen size, the S24 looks tiny when compared to it, and this is in part due to the added ergonomics of the base model. The rounded curves feel better in your hand, and this new flat approach to the aluminum rails adds a touch of minimalism that doesn't feel sharp at all. Once you do the math and how much lighter this phone is, and yeah, it's a treat to hold. Another reason why this phone feels small, even with the large display, is because the bezels are pretty much gone. Samsung went to great lengths to reduce their footprint while making them fully symmetrical, which results in a visual effect that's pretty surreal. At 6.2 inches diagonal, this dynamic AMOLED 2X remains industry-leading in color, contrast, and viewing angles, and can go brighter up to a crazy 2600 nits. It brings Full HD Plus resolution, which is really all you need on this footprint, and you now have adaptive refresh rate from 1 to 120 Hz, and Gorilla Glass Victus 2 keeps the panel well protected. I'd even say the speakers are just too good for the size of this phone.
Google TVs have had voice commands since day one with the Google
Assistant. About the only asterisk in this small package being great is that the specifications are a tad controversial depending on where you live. In the United States, we have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 for Galaxy, which means a bit more clock speed than what others are getting. But I know abroad, those who got Exynos are not going to be happy, so please judge my review based on all I know, which is Snapdragon. Another thing I do wish this phone had is more RAM and storage. Might be Samsung's way to keep the price down, but it's not like if the phone starts at a cheap price. What is good though is the new battery size along with its new forms of connectivity. In that regard, you're getting a flagship in every way. That said, my request for added specs was more to make this phone feel like the future-proof device that it is, with 7 years of software updates. Like seriously, this phone is good up until 2031, where I'm hoping 8 gigs of RAM performs just as well then as now, because overall my experience with One UI 6.1 has been fantastic. This continues to be my favorite version of Android given how you can make it as dense as you need, and given all of its multitasking options thanks to the Edge menus. Obviously, Samsung made a big deal about its AI capabilities, and I'll be one to tell you they're not gimmicks, or at least not most of them. Seriously, Circle to Search is genius. I can't imagine a more useful way to search for whatever's on my screen without being yanked out of what I'm currently doing. And then being able to transcribe my voice recordings, even if after the fact, and to be able to summarize them is pretty awesome. I've also spent a good deal of time reframing my photos and filling in what's missing in the Crop with Magic editor. This is seriously cool. About the only thing I'll tell you wasn't great is the interpreter, unless you speak English. Whatever people say in their language will translate near perfect to English, but I will tell you what I hear in Spanish is usually not correct. And I'm not talking euphemisms. It's as if the app still needs work in understanding context as well as it does in English. Also, that super slow-mo combo is pretty sick though. Keep in mind, it won't work on HDR10, which you kind of need in low light. It actually took me a while to figure it out. I also wish some of these features weren't tied to Samsung's keyboard, because even if it got aesthetically better, I still feel its multilingual support is way behind the likes of SwiftKey or others. Same case with getting summaries on Samsung's browser, which, let's be real, we all switch away from to use Chrome on day one. Now, after testing this phone for a few weeks, I have to say battery life on the Snapdragon is pretty great. I seriously do hope those on Exynos have at least some of this, because endurance has been just legendary, almost making me question why I would want to use the Ultra if battery life here is just so good. I'd even say you can go beyond a day of heavy use just fine, which is kind of the peace of mind people switch to big phones for. Phone calls and connectivity also continue to only get better, with this phone clinging to data even more reliably than before. Now, the camera department is yet another controversy because Samsung didn't really change the hardware. I wouldn't blame you for thinking that nothing really got improved, but I actually don't understand why Samsung didn't make a big deal about their new color tuning and processing, because for any of you that love the added contrast from Pixels or iPhones with the mode enabled, I'd say it's time to welcome the Galaxy into a more artistic look. The first thing you'll notice during the day is pretty much a new LUT being used. Colors are warmer, more artistic, with an added punch, but subtle enough to be just as good as the brands that claim to partner with camera companies. I really love these new results, doing away with all the overdoing of color and highlights that we had before. I also like that this new approach to color remains consistent on all focal lengths, which I would recommend up until 10x. Anything beyond will just fall apart in detail. You'll notice a ton of this processing improvement in low light. The phone is much faster at taking photos, which results in a device you can trust even with certain moving subjects. Best of all, it's not overdoing the highlights. In the past, these phones would just go crazy in pulling even more light than the scene had, but now I can tell this is far more cohesive to what my eyes saw. Maybe what I would improve is portraits going a bit over the top in their blur, which leaves results just a bit too fake. And yes, I also noticed that selfies are a bit tighter than before, which could have to do with the camera cutout being smaller now. Now, what I was not expecting was for video to get this much better. Just make sure you enable high bitrate in the settings and notice no more warping, no loss in detail, no rolling shutter. Just good video for the most part, even if the jump in focal lengths gets a bit weird in low light. I seriously can't wait to get a comparison with the iPhone just to see how much these two compete with each other, because for the longest time, Apple has always won this department. Super Steady also continues to have graduated to more resolution and some awesome stabilization, but unless you're running, there's no need to put up with the loss in detail here. The regular camera stabilization is good enough. You'll also notice these changes more in selfie video, which, yes, has improved dramatically. I seriously don't think I've ever wanted to simply go back and see if I can finally beat an iPhone, so stay tuned for that next video coming, as these results are dramatically better than before. To conclude, can I just say I can't remember the last time I reviewed the base Galaxy S and ended it with a smile. Ever since Samsung launched the S9 Plus, this has been the phone most of us particularly ignore because it either lacked features or sucked at lasting all day. And sure, this phone is missing a couple of features compared to its larger sibling, but for the first time ever, I can't really say that what's missing are things that I wish I had. Sure, I'd love more RAM, but never did I feel this phone bogged down. If anything, I'd say that matters more for aging if you plan to hold on to it for longer, because performance was great. Yes, we're missing a couple of extra ultra cameras, but I rarely zoom to subjects beyond 3x anyways. Bottom line, this is a large display on a small footprint. Ergonomics are so good I can reach all four corners with my thumb. These new colors and the new flat finish look so much more elegant. Seriously, I think Samsung finally figured out the formula. If you're in the market for a great smartphone but you don't want to pay $1,000, or you really want an easy phone to handle that'll last all day and then some, this is it. I'll be sure to link to some of our favorite deals in the description because that's also pretty good as well. Let me know if you agree with my assessment in the comments down below, and while you're at it, follow us on social media and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. You can also follow me on my personal handles to see me like the small galaxy for the first time ever. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like what you saw. I'm Jaime Rivera. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.